Hi, this is Olive, and just an update on what I'm doing with the Faith and Beauty Challenge. So I finished the rest of 1 Samuel, and I actually did it over the span of 2 days. So this is a combination of those 2 days, and it talks about how Samuel, who was chosen before he was even born to serve the Lord in the role of a prophet in the temple at that time, how he was chosen to anoint Saul to be king, the first king over the people of Israel. So it talks about that and how David gets introduced to his life and how David destroys this huge giant who later on we find out has like 4 relatives, 4 brothers that the children of Israel also have to slay, but that goes on later on in their journey. But this describes how David comes to serve Saul, and as Saul disobeys in the role that God appoints him in and anoints him in, how Saul's disobedience to following every instruction that God has given him actually disqualifies him to stay in that role, and not just him but his generations. And if you know anything about Israelite culture, having a security or a promise and a future for your generations, the children that you have after you, is one of the main values that they have in their culture. And so that was like worse to him than anything that could happen to his particular life. So the Lord promised that not only none of his sons will be continuing on the throne, but that the throne will be ripped from him, just like he ripped off a piece of clothing from Samuel after Samuel had given him the prophecy. So there's a lot to take away from this passage and this book. It's interesting. Be careful how you respond, or observe how a person responds to the prophecy of the Lord, because how they respond is how God is going to respond to them. So just like Saul ripped a piece of the garment that Samuel was wearing as he turned away from him, God said, so I will rip the kingdom from you. So I thought that was so interesting. God always responds to us how we respond to him, and he took exactly what he did and turned around and said, I'm going to do the same to you. It kind of gives a new light to you reap what you sow. He literally did. But anyway, I also want to point out that even though David was anointed next and he knew that Saul had lost his favor and glory and connection to the Lord on the throne, throughout that, even though Saul tried to kill him on numerous occasions because Saul became demented, he knew that David was next in line and he wanted to destroy him. But the interesting thing Saul did not recognize is you cannot destroy what God has already prophesied and God has already purposed and God has already planned. So there's 3 P's there: plan, purpose, and prophesied. So you cannot destroy that. And so Saul got it in his mind that somehow he could stop the prophecy of the Lord against him from coming to pass by destroying David. So he spends the rest of his life in not repentance, not productivity, but the rest of his life trying to annihilate David. And even in all of these episodes where David's life was almost in Saul's hands, on numerous occasions, he said, I will not touch Saul. David had an opportunity to destroy Saul, to kill him as well, but he did not touch him. And he said that he would not do it because he knew that he was anointed from the Lord. Even though God changed his mind about Saul, it still didn't negate the fact that he anointed him in the beginning of his journey. And that's how you hear him later saying, I believe in the book of Psalms, he says, touch not my anointed, do my prophets no harm. He came to that realization and that revelation because he lived the life. He had an opportunity to destroy a man that God clearly did not favor anymore and had no more grace over. And yet he didn't put his hand to him. He didn't destroy him. He didn't kill him because he was still anointed. And so that is also a message to us today. How many people there are, preachers and pastors and ministers out there that people put their lips on, that people talk about. And I want to expand that in another video, but the only thing I'm going to say about that right now is that even David, who had clearly not only a right to do whatever he wanted to Saul, but he was purposed and promised and prophesied from the Lord that what Saul had was going to become his. And we see later that not only David inherits the kingdom, but his wives as well. His whole family, he inherits that. He inherits his throne and all of his goods and everything his master, quote unquote, had owned. And so even though he had a right to do these things, he did not. And yet all these men, I read comments on YouTube channels and I read all of these opinions about people putting their lips on men and women that God has clearly anointed at the beginning of their journey and touching them, and they don't have a right. They weren't anointed, and they do half the things that these people do. And I'm really getting ahead of myself, entering into that next video I want to talk about. But if David, who had a right, did not touch Saul, we don't have a right to touch these people. We only have a right to pray for them. I mean, if we're really Christians and we really care about our brothers and sisters making it to heaven and being pleased by God, we would pray for them. We wouldn't tear them down. We wouldn't talk about them. We wouldn't point the finger, because only those who are called in a role and position of a prophet to speak to them like Samuel was, only they have a commission from the Lord to speak to them, not the lay person. We only have the right to obey what God has given us to do and to pray for our brothers and sisters. That's commanded in the scriptures. So if they're not praying for them, I have to question, where they are in their faith, where they are in their belief. Have they read the scriptures? Do they have the Spirit of Christ, fruit of the Spirit within them? And I'm wondering, where are you in this journey? I have many people commenting and telling me that they are also entering this journey of reading the scriptures from book to book, and that they are joining me in this Faith and Beauty Challenge. Where are you guys in the challenge? How are you doing in it? I've changed the hair portion so many times. You see, my hair is actually in 4 braids and 2 pinned in the back and 2 in the front. So I have done away with the balls for now. And I'm wondering where you are in your hair journey and where you are in the scriptures and what kind of insight you're gaining from that. So please share that in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Now have put together all that information in a very beautiful, pretty ebook. And if you're interested in that, I will have a link down below to my website which offers this ebook.